All right, we've got 6:30. We're going to call the meeting to order. The first good item is public comment. If there's anybody here that would hear anything, step up, let's go meeting. Great, then we will move on. Agenda review. You'll notice it's sort of a condensed agenda for principal's not here and all that stuff, but we've got a couple of main topics tonight that we need to talk about quite a lot. So we've got public on the agenda. Does anybody have anything they need to add or modify about any of this? Good, cool. All right. Nothing for consent? Yep. Great. We'll dive right in. So our first topic 5A is the Hill School renovation, and we've got our construction manager here. Take it away.
Awesome, thank you, everyone. Getting to know the school.
We're just going to spin the camera, so face.
We've got thousands.
No pressure. My name is Eric LeBlanc. I'm with the Valley Brensinger Architects, and we've been working with you in the committee for a number of months now, actually for over a year, I think. So wanted to provide a few updates, and I'll briefly summarize some of the stuff that we've been reviewing to date, and also some recent changes that we've been talking about as a committee related to the proposed design for Pembroke Hill. So tonight's topics, really want to we'll hit briefly the project schedule, the one that we've been working from. I'll briefly run through some previous progress to talk about the many steps that we've been through, including visioning and doing the existing facilities assessment, and then some new progress updates related to the building design, so you'll be able to see that. And then we'll just have, if anyone has any questions related to anything that we presented, feel free to ask. So just real briefly, I'm just providing this as kind of an overall context for you to take a step back and understand where we are right now. So obviously 2024 is coming at us fast and furious here. We've been operating under the assumption that there's going to be a March 2024 bond vote. So that's really what's been driving our schedule thus far and our progress. And some of this stuff may change, but generally, again, we would do there'd be a period of design, project would go out to bid, and then the project would be built and then occupied. So again, working through some of those details as the project changes. A little bit about where we are kind of in the design process right now. We've been in a conceptual design phase for a little bit, and we've been through a couple different revisions that you'll see. So we're in that phase of working through the design. Again, this is an early preliminary design. There's really nothing final about the design. It's really a concept that we've been working through, but really to get us to understand what the project is. Working through pricing, and then working through some community engagement in the coming months. So just to paint an overall picture of some of the things that we've been doing the past few months, I'll run through these very quickly because you've seen some of these updates before. One of the first things we did was we assembled the visioning team to help us really guide what are the priorities for the district moving forward. Through a series of workshops, we defined guiding principles. Why are we here? What are the types of outcomes that we're looking for? What are the obstacles? For instance, the existing facility that we're working with, what's impairing our progress? We worked towards developing a portrait of a graduate. So we came up with these 4 points: learner's mindset, empathy, citizenship, and collaboration. We worked to identify what appropriate design language would be. So we identified a number of different points here, some of them listed: welcoming arrival, large community spaces, that could be flexible spaces, project-based learning areas, small breakout areas, We wanted to right-size the classrooms because we knew some of the existing classrooms were too small. And then outdoor learning areas, which have always been a part of the curriculum. How do we tie that into the project? More progress. So again, it's been a road that we've been developing all of these pieces, right? So as we've been developing the design, we really want to make sure we're getting all the input we could. So we had staff input. We did a bunch of different meetings with instructors. We did surveys, and we were able to compile that and get a lot of really good information on spaces that they were looking to have, how spaces are being used, what's missing from the building. We took a look back at the facility assessment, right? That couple 100-page report that the architects worked on with the engineers in the school and facilities to identify what are the major issues with the building, understand what condition the building systems are in. On our side, we're looking at things like envelope issues. We're looking at ADA compliance. And we know we're dealing with some older buildings here, so really keen eye towards understanding, okay, what are the code issues for the building? Where can we prioritize our efforts to understand what parts of the building would we reuse versus remove? We work to develop a building program, and the way we do that is we kind of take stock of your existing program, what you have now for spaces, square footage, and what is the ideal size for that space, what are the ideal adjacencies for spaces, what wants to be next to another space. That helped us identify if spaces currently serve us well and what spaces we're missing. So as architects, we start to take that program and make little pieces, right? And we start to envision how those program pieces are, start to become rooms and what the relationship between those are. So we also took a step back and looked at our visioning, and we had this wonderful diagram that we developed during that process that really helped us define what were the priorities for an ideal layout for a school. So ideas like, what are the public programs versus the private programs? How do we keep those programs separate from the classroom areas? What's our ideal layout of classrooms? What spaces are classrooms sharing? What kind of community spaces do we want to have? So this was a very, again, a rough diagram of what we were looking for. Okay, what's the ideal scenario for us? And then, again, as architects, we're always looking at different options. So I think we probably presented 16 or 20 different massing options on site, looking at how we might approach reusing the existing building and developing the site, making sure that we are addressing site circulation. We actually landed on an appropriate solution pretty quickly. Just to give you, again, some context, I know you all know that's the current building where it stands. And understand that between that iterative process and where we are today, there were so many different design meetings that we had to really arrive at what we had presented to you a couple months ago when we were before the school board. So this was the previous design, and we had proposed that we would keep the existing 80s building, which fared well compared to the older 60s buildings, which really we felt would be difficult to retrofit for 21st century learning. And we felt that the cost of doing so exceeds the benefit of, okay, what are other options if we were to tear that building down and build in place. So this was the concept that we came up with. I have this up here just so you have overall square footage numbers. So we had, again, the existing building that we were maintaining, a 2-story classroom addition on the south side of the site, a brand new cafeteria and gym, support spaces, administrative spaces. By the time you add up all of those spaces, renovated area and new construction, we were right at 96,000 square feet. So this was the concept that once we brought on our construction manager, Harvey, we've been working with since. This was the project that we had sent out to them to get some preliminary pricing on. So again, these are some of the design things that we had been working through in previous weeks. This was a massing model of the building that we had done. We'd even done a couple of renderings to understand, okay, here's what the new entry of the building could look like. Here's how it interfaces. Here's how the new building interfaces with the old building. But then we kind of had to have a little bit of a come together moment once we started getting construction costs back, right? So we were able to get some preliminary numbers for that design that you just saw on screen. And so we understand that we're giving a range for now. We're somewhere in the range of $39 to $45 million for that project. So keep in mind that is total project cost for all the fees, the design fees, the construction. And to give you an idea of relative square footage of the project, again, 96,000 square feet. So we were comfortable with that range for the project that you saw there. So or I should say a couple committee meetings ago, once we had Harvey on board and they helped us understand some of the costing information, we thought, well, let's put our brains together. How do we look at the site a little differently? It was actually pitched to us that, we have a fairly large parcel of land. What are our options for just building a brand new school on the site? Is that even possible? So options moving forward, we said we could stay the course. We're comfortable with that cost range given. We're comfortable with the design. We could move forward in that direction. We said we could also look at the project more closely, start to figure out areas that we could reduce or remove some of the scope of the project to bring costs down. And again, we saw that third option of, okay, let's kind of take a big step back here and rethink, what are we doing? What are other options on site? So we looked at what it would take to do a new building. A couple things stood out to us immediately working with Harvey. We found that the new project, basically if you were to take square footage of a new building, maybe 6,000 square feet, brand new building, compare it to what we had, which was an addition renovation project, those could be the same cost. So from the get-go, we thought it was very important to consider, okay, there could be a lot of benefits of doing just a brand new building on site without having to worry about phase construction and working on the existing building. So again, availability of parcel is great. Not all districts have that. You happen to have that. The new project has a comparable, same cost for it as the addition renovation project. Less time on the construction site is a big one. So when we're dealing with renovation projects, they have to be phased, especially because school buildings are occupied. So we need to be able to renovate certain areas and move kids around as we're renovating the buildings. If you're building a brand new building on site, you don't have to do quite as much phasing, right? The kids stay in the existing building for the time being. Construction is going on elsewhere. Mitigation of unknowns. So we all know dealing with existing buildings, there are always surprises. Anyone that's a homeowner knows that. Start to open up walls and ceilings and you find some things that you weren't necessarily anticipating. Safety is always a concern. We're not necessarily concerned for the kids' safety. We know working with Harvey and how the project's being phased and separation and construction site. We know it's a safe project either way, but there's the added benefit of we don't have to have construction going on where kids are if we went to a new building. A new building would afford you ideal program sizing and adjacency. We knew there were some limitations to the envelope of reusing the 80s building. So again, you're limited by certain constraints of that building, by the structure. We're limited incidentally by things like roof loads and being able to put mechanical systems in that building. Again, not saying that that can't be done, but it's another thing to consider as we're looking at what our options are. Long-term operation, more efficient building. So a brand new building will have a new envelope. It'll meet modern energy code. Long-term, you'll be spending less money to maintain that building. And then finally, site access. So again, it just allows us to, again, take a big picture look at the site and understand, okay, how do we improve car and bus circulation? How do we improve site safety and drop-off sequences? So as we started to consider all these, it's like, wow, there's quite a bit of merit to start looking at what a new building on site might be. So jumping right to it, this is the concept that we've been working through for, I think, just like 2 weeks now, maybe just under 2 weeks. So we've been able to come up with a couple ideas very quickly. This is a representation of the program we've been working through basically for the past 6 months. So it has all of the classroom spaces that we're looking for, the special ed support spaces, has the new entry sequence, has the cafeteria and gym. So we didn't do any program reduction per se, but because we have a more efficient layout, we are able to save a little bit of square footage. So that's why I'm saying up there we're saving about 1,600 square feet in final building square footage from the previous design to this design. So just to break it up by areas, I won't get into too much detail, but we tried to, again, maintain the program and maintain many of the relationships that we've been talking about previously. So the admin layout is exactly basically how we had spoke about in the previous design. Some of the other things shifted around, but we still have a really great relationship in that wing between the art, music, and iLab programs. We still have a shared cafeteria gym space that can be opened up into one large space. Our classroom configuration is a little bit different. You can see we have a sawtooth design, but that really actually helps us group classrooms together and have shared spaces. And again, you can kind of understand from the diagram here, we have a one-story portion, a double height gym and caf portion, and then a two-story classroom wing area. So this is a zoomed in version of the first floor, and I'll just kind of quickly take you through the parts of the building. So this is the main entry. Again, it's got that secure entry sequence. It's got the secure waiting area. It's got a brand new right-sized nurse suite, which is going to be appropriately sized for the number of students you have there. It has all the offices you need with good visibility of the rest of the building. I neglected in my presentation to zoom in on this area, so we'll look at it here, but we've got a good grouping of special spaces like art and music with some shared storage spaces. They've got support spaces like kiln rooms and practice rooms to help those programs. The iLab we thought could have a really cool space right at the heart of the building, nice visibility, and have students be able to share what they're working on. Zoom in into the caf and gym area. So again, maintaining a lot of the same design layout that we had in the previous design. So cafeteria with a stage could be opened up for larger performances. We thought there could be bleacher space for seating out back. This will have the kitchen size that you need. It will have the multi-user bathrooms for public gathering spaces.
Spider and that. Everybody.
It's a crazy zone. All the spaces that we had talked about, concessions, our elevator is in this area because we have a two-story building. We know we need an elevator. I'll zoom in on what I'm calling a knuckle, but that's kind of the center of the building where the library is. We also have two good-sized faculty rooms, one on this floor and one above. Support spaces like boiler rooms, staff toilets, storage. And now we'll take a look at the pre-K wing. So again, this will have the 4 pre-K classrooms. We also have a flex special ed classroom. And that actually helps us build out that wing, right? Because every other grade level is going to have 5 classrooms. Pre-K is the only one with 4 right now. In the center, we have guidance spaces. We have an intervention room. Pre-K is a little bit different in that they don't have as much of a community area in their wing. They're still all grouped together. They still have a space, but we've stretched some of the other programs in that area, understanding that students are mostly in their homeroom at that grade level. All these classrooms have their own toilet room and storage. Zooming over to kindergarten, again, they all have their own toilet room and storage, but they'll have a little bit more of a commons area, which is sort of their community space, helps give them an identity to their wing. Like every wing, they'll have their own intervention room, they'll have a small classroom, and then kind of backfilling some of the other spaces that we're looking for in that core area. And again, a very similar layout to the first grade. Every classroom's got their own toilet room and storage room. They've got a commons. We've worked in a regulation room, a speech room, intervention room, and school psychologists to speak to. Second floor, very similar layout. Second grade, this is the first grade level that they don't have their own toilet rooms off the room, but we have them off the corridor instead. Again, they have their own commons, they have their own intervention room, and they have their own identity in this wing. Third grade, very similar story. They have some of the special ed support programs at the center here. Same with fourth grade. So I guess I wanted to wrap up by saying where we kind of stand now is we have that previous design that we've been working from, the renovation/addition project. In the past 2 weeks, we've transitioned to having a new school building project. We understand that the cost range we've been given for each project is about the same. It was a minor square footage savings for the new school building project. We have not done full pricing on that new school building yet. We're still working through the design of that. But where we're working from now is sort of where we stand with the design and the numbers that you were given last week, the range between 39 and 44 million dollars. That's where we would stand with the new design now. Anything I'm missing there? Any questions?
I have a question. I'm thrilled about the new school option. I was a proponent of that at a couple school board meetings ago, and I felt like I got in big trouble for saying that out loud. So I'm happy to see it sort of on pen and paper. But it would be really helpful to see, when the costing comes out, to see a comparative analysis of the lifetime costing difference as between the two options. Because if the cost comes out to be like an apples to apples cost to build, or even perhaps that it's more expensive to build a new school, though I hope that won't be the result. It's going to be really important to be able to show, like, but over the next whatever 20 to 40 years, we can anticipate a savings of this much money or this percentage of money. So I would like to put forward that request, please.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that. I think we have a way that we can start to understand how those costs are impacted.
Other questions, comments? I had one, but it was actually for, gosh, it's gone.
But he fixed it.
Yeah. One, I guess concern I have, obviously, I think apples to apples, makes sense to have a new building. You get the energy efficiencies, you get modern stuff that's going to last longer for the same cost. That all sounds great. One of my concerns that's more on our side of the table, I think, is then we've got a big building sitting there. It's not as easy to sell as the last one we sold because we're not selling off the whole property. So I assume there's going to be ongoing maintenance costs. We can't just let that building sit. There's going to have to be maintenance people in there. Roofs are going to have to be kept up. So I'm interested to see what that cost would be, you know, decade per decade to keep that building not condemned at least. And I'm interested to see if we could use it for anything. Like we're having a new building and we're going to incorporate space for things we might not have space for now. But are there SAU preschool programs or something that we can use at least some portion of that building for? So to me, that's a little bit of a wild card. Something.
Yeah, I guess what, everything's well and good, but either with a renovation or a new building, what I'm looking at is 20 years down the road. Like currently 350 population.
Between 330 and 340.
So in that area, and conceivably, we had a bump across the whole school district of 83 students. So I think that's just a bump. And, you know, everybody's talking about declining enrollments and stuff like that. But with a lot of growth that's going on in the area, that's going to impact us to a certain extent. So I'm looking in 20 years, are we going to be able to have another 150 students in school? That's, you know, because I don't want to 10 years from now say, hey, we need to make it bigger. So.
I'll just quickly, I can't necessarily say that we can build, we can anticipate to a certain degree, right, of what we would expect enrollment to be. I'll just say that in the current design, and this will certainly factor in as we start to figure out how this building fits on the site, we believe that this building can be added onto in the future in such a way that you're not tearing other pieces out or significantly altering the design of the building. So we feel in the future, should a significant expansion be needed, again, this is going beyond the current program and enrollment that we have now. We feel this design is actually expandable. If that makes sense.
So we have a conversation about the number of classes. We talked about going down 4 and have 5. So we've gone from 6 in Pembroke to 5 down to 4. We're bumping up in a couple of grades against the max number of students in the class. And I thought it would be crazy to leave it at 4. And I feel like we're going to be at 5 again. I'm wrong, but you've got a lot of development going on. And we are almost ready to tip into that 5th classroom as it is. So we decided it would be wiser to keep 5 classrooms
So
per grade.
per grade.
So that would be another, 20 kids per say.
It would be 400. Okay. All right, as long as we're going somewhere in that route, that's perfect.
Well, that was a lot to take in. 20 minutes.
I just have one quick, is this presentation available to us now, or will it be?
Yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
'cause I'd like to look at it a little closer.
Guys are not so great anymore. Thank you.
Josh, while you were out of the room, I mentioned, and I'm not looking for an answer, but obviously, where my head's at, if we went with a new building, we still have a building sitting there. And we can't sell it like we sold Village because it's on our property. And so I'm assuming there's an ongoing maintenance cost to keep a building like that from falling over and, you know, whatever. So I don't know what that looks like if we eventually aren't using that building for anything. Like, what does it take money-wise to just still have it there? Or would the wise thing to do be eventually bulldoze it? I don't know.
Okay.
Can I just jump in on that though?
That's something that's on my mind.
Absolutely.
I know it's not an easy thing to do though, but there's nothing preventing us, as far as I know, from subdividing the lot and selling it off to someone who might want to buy it, right? I mean, that's beyond the scope of tonight's decision making, but.
Fine, you know, just to knock it down, like have more athletic field space, like, I don't know, so that's kind of beyond the scope, it's just, that's for some period of time, there's gonna be a building sitting there not occupied, and
So, and I think that would determine what we determine to do long-term. So use the Village as an example. A couple of years back, we took out all the water. We pretty much made it winter-proof because we knew long-term we weren't doing much with that. If long-term we're gonna do something with that building, then we would obviously heat it. We would keep the water active and open the doors a little bit more than we would have down there.
others. Is there anything in particular that you're looking for us, I mean, are you looking for a direction? Do you want me to take a sort of poll of the board and see who's leaning in the direction of which of these two things, or are we not at that point quite yet?
I think very soon, if we intend to move quickly on this project, we'll need to know if we're happy with the range, the cost range that we're in. I think the committee was sold on the new building, given that they were same cost.
Basically echo what Eric just said, that they have been full steam ahead for us, working really hard to get this drawn up and start the pricing. So we need to know if that is, if this all sounds like a good idea to you, if we should proceed and get the pricing and go ahead.
Anybody have any comment? I've got one more question before I shift to that. Anybody else? So I know one thing that will come up when we talk to MBC and the town, there's been ongoing concerns for years about the water drainage situation on that property in general. Is that something that you've all already been approached about and have planned into this to mitigate that issue, I assume?
Yeah, so especially if it's we have a lot more work to do on that side to look at, especially because we're dealing with a different parcel than we originally planned. But we actually have a copy of the drainage study from 91 and kind of aware of all the drainage issues that were happening at the existing building for a number of years. So it's definitely something what we need to do a little bit more investigation on. But we will get there.
I just know that's, it's funny what little things in a town like this kind of get legs. And that's one thing when, if you mention that property, everybody's like, well, what about water? So I just want to make sure that it was.
Even the ways that we deal with water retention today is much different than it would have been dealt with when that building was built. So, so anything we do that's new, especially a new design, is going to be taking all of that into account.
Want to go around and everybody can say their piece, or do you want me to slip them?
Can I just ask a more pointed follow-up on that? I mean, have you guys done any permitting analysis on what state permitting is going to be required? And when will you do that if you haven't done it yet?
Everything's moving so quickly out there. We did have a civil engineer walk with us, who's the civil engineer who's working on the other piece of the property, who did the analysis for the early part of this. He walked with us on Monday with some of the staff here. And we were able to kind of look at some of the areas he had concerns about. So beyond that, he is developing a scope that we can get a wetland scientist out there to actually flag. And so we'll have not just his best guess, but an actual flagging that we can lay out and map out so we can be 100% sure where we put the building is not in any wetlands or encroaching on anything. So yes, we are in the process of moving forward with that.
So is that what you're talking about with the civil engineer? Is that as a renovation addition, or is this, we are looking at the property if we're gonna put a new building?
This is just for the new building. The renovation property you already looked at.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thought we were kind of backtracking there. I was getting a little nervous.
Well, I would bet a lot of money on the fact that the current building probably impacted wetlands when it was built. We don't have to go there, but I would also be okay if the new building impacted wetlands. I think it's okay. Restoration can happen. I think there's a good program for that. What I'm nervous about is spending time to move forward with the new building concept and then finding out, in 5 months that it's not permittable. That the permits to do the project are not obtainable. That's my concern. But aside from that, I'm all green light for the new building.
I think that is your full response. Very good.
I'm all for a new building.
Melanie?
I've had a lot of time to digest all of this tonight, but I'm absolutely 100% for the new building.
Yeah, same, especially where it doesn't impact the current building where the kids are learning. I mean, that makes a lot more sense, and hopefully add some cost savings to the whole project.
Yeah, that's where I'm at to it, with a couple of assumptions, obviously, the work's permissible, and that the cost does come in similar or slightly less, then I don't see an advantage to keeping an aging building that's gonna, in theory, cost us more down the road to keep up because the materials are older. If we're talking apples to apples cost wise, then it sounds like you've got your direction. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming and sharing all that. It's one of the board projects that I haven't had time to keep a finger on, and it's nice to see, it's coming together. So, I'll say from this side of the table, I'm a bit concerned with timeframe and the messaging as far as getting to town meeting for this year, so. But anyway,
That's up to us all.
anybody else have any questions for these gentlemen before we go? Good. All right, thank you very much, appreciate it. And yeah, you can send this to Patty or to whoever, make it available to us to fly that way also.
Yep, absolutely. Let us know if you need us again.
Okay. Do we, that's. Well, I guess, is that,
Yeah,
can I pause on this, but just a second? I'm just looking down, that's our thought about Hillsley. If, I know we've got a lot to do, but, what's that?
Should we jump ahead to the primary day? Is that what you're gonna say? Sorry.
No, I thought about that, we don't need anything else for that, sir.
Okay.
I'm just, I just, like I just said, I'm concerned about the timeline and the community engagement. I know you guys, the committee has been deciding, kind of going down that road, so just looking for an update on sort of where we're at with that, because it's, we're less than 4 months from voting. And I think we're, just what Allenstown did, I think we're, weeks behind that sort of timeline, so just kind of where we're at with the messaging.
So that was the outcome of where we ended with the meeting we just left from them, was to get what your guys' feedback was. We are, now that means we're gonna meet on Tuesday at 3, and the committee's gonna come together and put together the talking points, essentially the information that's gonna be pushed out. We're looking at social media, updating the websites and things like that. So we talked about that at the end of the meeting, and that's what we're gonna focus on Tuesday at 3. We decided we're gonna meet, pull all that together and start pushing it out. They gave us some direction as far as the things that we can and cannot say, so I offered to take that on, just because I know right now it's a lot for everybody, so that's going to be my focus, to help get that information out to everyone. They'll give us the information we need, and then we'll have staff members and anyone else on the committee push it out. So that's our goal, starting next week, to pull all that information out, put it together, and get it out to the community. We talked about information nights. We could do some virtually. We have our concerts coming up. So we're gonna work really hard in the next week and a half to pull that together and start pushing it out, specifically in the next 2 months, thinking that as getting that information out as fast and furious to everybody. So I think that's where we landed with it. Melanie?
Great.
For me to act,
I thought you were talking.
I was just gonna
Ask Patty if she wanted to add, because we kind of talked about 2 different things tonight. No? At the meet, well, we talked about pushing out and going really fast for March, or if we were gonna hold back a little bit and wait, so.
They, that was one of the questions they asked us, if we were still on schedule to move forward with this in the next few months. And we need to review the budget, and I thought you might want to think on that. But if we're gonna do this, we have to, I'm worried that it's the holidays, we would need to be like breakneck speed, to get everything done. So we just want to think about that and make that final decision.
Yeah, I mean, I guess putting on the pessimist hat, the worst that happens is it gets voted down, right? And then I think, you bring the project back next year, obviously, and you've got more time to spin it and everything, but we're also, taking extra time from some of our staff. We're asking community members to help us out, and they're volunteering time. And I don't want to assume that we're going to have that amount of help for another year either. So are we, the 5 of us, saying we want to, push for this to get it on in March this year and as much as we possibly can?
I have a question. I didn't think that the board was gonna have to do nothing. But I guess I feel like the team that just left, I had the impression that they were going to be doing the bulk of the PR work.
I thought I remembered that too, but when I
Right.
brought that up, I think I was told that was one of the other ones that we interviewed and not the one that we actually selected.
Yes.
That's not how I remember it. I'm on board with it, but.
The other one because I was sitting over there at that time, and it was the other team that said they had the whole marketing department, and they're the ones that did the Allenstown School with the big marketing. So that's the only part that's concerning, that we just can't seem to, yes, I know we're saying, okay, we're gonna have some info, we're gonna do virtual stuff.
But I feel like we are just.
We
Yeah.
desperately, we need a good website. We need someone to handle the social media, which is huge. And if you set something up, say on Facebook, and you're gonna put posts and information, people are going to expect someone's gonna answer their questions. So that's another whole management piece to decide who's gonna be in charge of that, if you're going to allow comments. And if you don't allow comments, that might be difficult for people too, because then there's no back and forth with the communities.
We did talk about that a little bit tonight. So what we went over is, like, if you're on the budget committee, if you're on the school board, you can push like the information out that says vote, but not says vote yes, vote no. But you can direct people to the website and it's gonna be handled. And we can put a link, if we shut off a comment on a social media, you can put the link that goes to, so you can send an email, so it comes through a virtual chain. And then if there's any community members who wanna start a Facebook that says vote yes on the new middle school, they can do that. But we can't be doing that.
Right.
And they work, am I missing something? I think that was pretty much it.
I think what they've offered to do for us is feed us information. So they have a lot of experience. They said, you need to identify your 4 or 5 bullet points that you're just gonna consistently, your consistent message, your consistent 4 or 5 things that you wanna make sure people know about. And they have sent some links to other schools they've worked with so we can see what they did. So they'll feed us the information we want to share, but they don't actually do the work.
The only other thing that we talked about too, because I was the same mindset that you said, is some talk tonight came up, that sometimes it's not better to think, oh, well, if it fails, we could just do it next year, because then that sometimes sets like a negative for the following year, where those same people will show up and be like, well, what'd you change? You said no.
Well, and I think this town has experienced too, that typically that makes the project more expensive. Well, every year you'd be like, yeah, so it's even more now. I feel like every single year construction costs go up by 10% now. So
That was what I was gonna say. They said that every year expect like 3 to 4% increases what they're sharing. They obviously don't have a crystal ball, but they're saying that that's what you can expect every year with that.
Any other questions, comments on this before we vote? Sorry, I didn't mean to stretch it out even farther.
We asked a question, but we didn't really,
Yeah.
all on board for anything to go.
I'm sorry to belabor this, but I'm just looking at the quote, like the proposal that LaValle Bresinger gave us. They represented that they have 6 marketing graphic design professionals. They said that their programming starts with a community engagement plan, that they believe in working closely with community members, that they do public charrettes, that their fully staffed marketing and graphic design group is available to develop a variety of graphic materials to assist in the public outreach component. I'm not, based on your needs, we will devise a strategy which utilizes various media to engage and inform the community. Communication tools may include informational brochures, community television and radio, internet-based discussion boards, blogs, social online surveys, press releases, and newsletters. I have not seen them produce any of these items. So I understand that each of the applicants brought forward different teams, but I would like to beg to differ that this team did not represent that they have a marketing team and would provide these services to us.
So working with them in Deerfield, they do that, and they will actually design our postcards for us. They don't actually do the outreach. They came to parent nights, they came to meetings, any community things that we have, they would come and do presentations, share information. So they're gonna feed us whatever we need. They are gonna they'll design brochures and postcards that we would then take and mail out or do whatever we're gonna do with it. So they'll provide all of that, but they don't actually do the work.
So I would assume that at this point that can start if we have a rough design now, they have something to put out.
Right, that's what we've been waiting
So
for.
I guess I think Amy and I are sort of on the same wavelength, that everything that they said they would do, we should lead on.
Right.
Yeah, it says right here.
Once sufficient information has been assembled to begin design of conceptual options and solutions, we, meaning them, not us, we will facilitate a series of design meetings at which the public will be encouraged to join the building committee.
Now's the time. Yeah, exactly.
Got something?
I just think because of the switch, I think we were at this point a couple weeks ago that we were getting ready, like that was the next step. But because that option was presented, it almost brought us back a couple of weeks. So that is the goal for next week, to pull all that together. They'll provide all of that for us. We can use out in any way that we possibly.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to number B.
So knowing we had a lot tonight, we did, after talking to Andy, we gave, our tech folks a pass on coming to present this evening. So they did put the replacement cycle information together in a great handout. I think it's really self-explanatory. So I let them know that I would give it to you, you would review it. And then they said they were happy to come on another evening when we weren't so packed if you wanted them to. So that information is in, your drive for you to look at.
We ask some questions. So for the budget that is underway now, are these numbers in it?
Yes.
And then how do the future year numbers relate to capital? Are any of these future numbers in any of the capital improvement planning, trust fund planning, or any of the other planning tools that we use?
To this point, the board has not used the technology trust fund for our replacement cycle. That is something that's available to you when we do the warrant articles, if you wanted to propose that, but we have been up until this point putting our replacement cycle in our budget.
And to piggybacking on what Amy was just saying, I was just kind of looking at the numbers today. And obviously, over the next few years, we're looking at huge replacement costs. I mean, we're not going down by any means, we're going up, up, up. So I'm wondering if that's something that we really look to do, is dip into those trust funds and offset some of this cost. And this year, for the 2024-2025, it's $161,000. And then by 26, 27, we're over $200,000. So we need to really think hard about dipping into those trust funds.
I would agree.
And thank you, Carrie, for doing the math. Patty, this is so silly, but can you have this updated to add a 3-school total for each year, please?
Yes.
I was just looking for the sake, I just wanted to see if that was.
I even tried to export the PDF to Excel and to Word so I could do a summation, but.
For each year, yeah.
I just ran an ad as people.
I didn't do that. Thank you.
Any other preliminary questions on the tech stuff before we have a chance today? Not to gloss over it.
Right, yeah.
All right, then we will move on to Amber. Hold the breath for a few minutes.
Good job, now. So, nice work, we need you. Did you bring extra budgets? We have 2 MBC members.
Yep.
Jerry and Jason want a copy. Do you want a copy of the budget?
We'll get you the Excel, but if you want.
I wouldn't mind having one if it's fair.
I did bring you, just in case NBC members came, you did.
So you got a pretty thick packet in front of you tonight. The reason why you have multiple books is because the budget was 101 pages with all the documents.
Yes.
So I couldn't put it all in one and have it stapled.
As you can be really close to those, sorry.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds awful. Yeah.
All right, so you have 3 packets in front of you tonight. You have one that looks like this. This is everything I'm going to cover tonight. I put it in written formation. So in case you miss something, it should be here. Then you have another packet that says board meeting budget information. This is your actual budget. And then you have another packet that says Pembroke budget documents. That's all like the backup. So the meat of,
And we can post this online tomorrow, right? Did you
Yep.
send it? Yeah.
I sent it to Ashley. Yep. And it's in the drawer. Yep. All right, so let's start. Well, I'm really gonna just focus on the actual budget. And then if you wanna refer to something in the other budget packet, we definitely can. But I'm gonna, for the sake of going through the budget summary, it's going to be this main packet.
And can I just mention, I think you all met Jess Bickford at one of your meetings, but she's here. One of the larger increases in your budget is in the special education lines and transportation. So Jess is here if you have questions. And she also gave you a few handouts, tips and tricks for a couple of things that were on the table when you got here. So she's also here as a resource.
Okay. So I believe I did for your district. I think we're the first district I added line numbers to in your budget. So I'm going to be referencing line numbers. So the first number you see in your budget on page 1 is going to be the account number, then the description. The third column is the line numbers. Those are the line numbers I'm going to be referring to as I'm going through. So first, before I go through the budget, I just want to tell you what you have in front of you. So in the packets I gave you, you're going to have a revised operating budget. The first budget you received was from the principals, and that just had the meat of what they needed to run their instruction, their building, those types of things. Then you're going to have your budget rosters, which are going to be in this other packet, along with the co-curricular schedule. That's the backup for that. I've also included the lease schedule, food service budgets in this packet, the district assessment breakdown, your estimated revenue, your estimated tax impact, your history, surplus history and tax rate history, and your trust fund balance. So that's all going to be in this extra packet. So some of the things that I've changed from this version, from the last version that you saw, is that all the salaries and hourly employees are going to have been added, and not the high school tuition. All health and dental and related fringe benefits have been added. We do have final rates for those. Transportation, special education. You had some utilities in last time. I've added in the rest of those. The school board expenses, which are your 2300 accounts, have been added. And then the food service and grant expenses. So those are the areas I'm going to cover tonight. And of course, we can go through whatever else. But tonight, the things I'm going to mention at first are only lines that I changed from the last version to this one. And then if you have any further questions or want to talk about anything further, we can do that, if that works for you. Does that work for you? I don't want to assume. All right, so let's start on page 1. Lines 1 through 3, those are your teacher salaries. So I've added those salaries in there.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm assuming you gentlemen figured it out, but just in case, this does look a little bit different than last year. It's exported from the new system. So the line numbers are not all the way on the left anymore. There's a column, third column, when Amber's referring to line numbers, it's those line numbers now, not Excel ones. Sorry.
No, that's okay, please. I want to make sure they know what I'm looking at. So in that first 3 lines, the line 1, 2, and 3, those are your teacher salaries. I am going to add another note under 104. The main changes in these 3 lines do have to do with either personnel changes, plus there was a collective bargaining agreement that was voted on, so those are included. For Hill School, there is an additional position that's been added for a math coach. That math coach we currently have, but it's been previously covered by a grant. That grant now goes away, so we're looking to add that. We're also looking to add that same positions to Three Rivers. So there's 2 additional teaching positions added in lines 1 and 2, 1 for each one. Line 6, we've added in the tutor salary. That wasn't in there before. That's for Pembroke Academy. Line 7, 8, and 9, I've added in your substitute salaries. We did base that off of what's actually been happening. They have been higher than what we've been budgeting. So we've added in some extra dollars for that.
Amber, I just need a refresher on the new formatting coming out of the software.
Sure.
So for example, account note, one new math coach position added, that goes with line number 2.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
just
the
making
notes
sure I'm
follow-
reading it right.
Yes, the notes follow right after the line.
I'm really sorry.
Yes, which is very, and unfortunately, I can't change the spacing if that's what it does.
That's fine.
In the next version, that note will also be right under line 1 of the line 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. That does cause some confusion sometimes when
Yeah.
there's a lot of notes, so thank you for bringing that up. Line 10, this is actually a new line we've added to the budget. This is in particular to a new position for Pembroke Academy. This is to support student services. And this was also covered in a grant, and we're hoping to continue this position. So it is a non-certified position, which is why it's not in teachers. So we've added that in. Page 2 of the notebook. Lines 11 and 12, I had added in the regular ed salaries. That's for Hill School and Three Rivers. Those were not in there before. Lines 20, 22, and 24, which is on page 2 of your budget, are your consulting services. These are your English as a second language. We've added in the dollars there. Those were not there before. These services are required. They are not special ed related. And they are increasing pretty significant by approximately 71,000. Any questions on that? Because I have made no other changes to regular programs, the 1100s. Those are the only changes I made to 1100 programs.
Could I just ask, if it's not a big deal, when you go back to add that note at the beginning for line 1?
Yep.
Any place, whether it's people or stuff, that was previously grant funded, could you
Yep.
just note that?
Sure
I think it'd be helpful for the MDC to look and know that we're not, it's not all new stuff, we just want to switch the funding.
Sure can.
Honestly, it'd help me too, because I read it in pencil on every one of these.
I meant to do that. I apologize. I did do that on the other districts. So one of the other things, some of the account sections, when I say sections, I mean like 1100, 1200, 1300. Some of those sections within this budget report will total, and some don't give you an end total because there's subtotals throughout that section. So I'm going to refer to totals as I'm going along as well. So the 1100 lines, which are your regular programs, your student instruction, are increasing $837,000. Now, with that said, the collective bargaining agreement, I believe that was like 420 or 444,000 that we anticipated already for an increase just from the collective. All of that isn't in these particular lines because some are going to be in the 1200, some's going to be your nurse and guidance, but the bulk of it is in that section. Any questions on regular programs before I move from those? And if I'm going too fast, please slow me down. My brain works like a hamster wheel. All right, so I didn't make any changes to pages 3 to 12 through 12. So we could go all the way to page 13. All right, so this section is going to start way at the bottom. There's actually only one line on this page, but this is going to start your special ed section, okay, which is your 1200 accounts. So I've added in lines 178, and then if you flip the page to 14, is going to be 179 and 180. These are your special ed teachers. There have not been any additional FTEs added, no additional positions. This is strictly, this increase is derived off the CBA increases and any personnel changes. On line 185, we've added in some interpreter services. That's for PA. On line 188, we've added in the salary for your special ed coordinator, director of exception services. On lines 189, 190, and 191, those are your pair salaries, your lead salaries. So I've added in those. There's a decrease in this line, but it's strictly because we just had personnel change. They're all the same amount of it. On lines 192, 193, and 194, those are your summer tutoring services. So those services have been added for you. In lines 195, 196, and 197, those are your summer management services. So they basically go over summer evaluations, they do meetings, and then put together a plan. On lines 208, 209, and 210, which are all on page 15 and 16. Are your contracted services. This line is a very large increase, but we did have a conversation for those of you that have been at the full SAU board meeting. This is the line we talked about where we merged Fund 4 and Fund 9. Okay, so while this line is going up, some of it is because there's increased services, but some of it is also because we shifted up the accounts line 001, 21, 23, 300. I've noted this in your notes for you. It is on page 26 of your budget, on lines 385, 386, and 387. We shifted those costs up. So when we get to that page, those lines are now going to be zero. Okay, so while this section is going up because of increased services and because of shifting the cost, when we get to the 2100 accounts, there's going to be a decrease in that section. Lines 218 to 223, which is going to be on your page 16. Those are going to be your summer special placements and your special placements, and those have increased substantially as well because of services that are required. So in this section, in the 1200 special programs, it's almost $1.4 million. We will see about a $550,000 decrease in the 2100s. Any questions about special education? And we have Jessica here as well, if you have any specific questions that you would like to ask. I know that's a lot to chew.
One of the sheets that I handed you guys, the one with the tables on it, actually includes all of the services that cover those costs. And I broke them out between each of the schools because the services vary between the school districts. Or between the school buildings. So you can see what kind of services are covered in those costs that students need.
And can we make sure that those documents are made available to NBC as well? They always like to know as much as they can about the special education information. I think that's very helpful.
Right. So,
I apologize if this comes across as an uneducated question, but why do we say this? I guess why are we contracting out so many services? Why are these not services that we are able to handle within our district? Does that make sense?
There.
That's actually a really good question. It's not uneducated at all. So when we say contracted services, a lot of those services aren't necessarily contracts we have with outside organizations. These contracted services are our SAU employees that we hire that may cover multiple different school districts within our SAU.
Oh.
So when I say contracted services, it might be an organization that we contract out for, like vision services or something like that. But it may also include an occupational therapist that we have servicing students within that building. So it's a mix. Most of them, I will tell you, most of them are our own employees. They are just considered a contracted service because that's what we kind of refer to that group of individuals in special ed. That's all.
Sort of contracting with the SAU.
Okay.
Because we hire full-time people and then they go out to the buildings.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's a really good question. You were probably here at the time, but going back maybe 3 years, maybe right before COVID, we contracted for most of the year. I think we had gotten rid of a speech path.
Yeah.
And then shortly into the next school year, we had to
Yeah.
contract one for more money. So yeah, it's definitely something to keep in mind.
Thank you.
Any other questions about special ed?
Program?
Once.
Yeah, question, I just have a comment, and I live the world. And I know sometimes it's absolutely warranted, and the only comment is, as a district, we have amazing staff here, and we need to do better. These kids should be in our building, we need to work harder as a district. These kids should be with their neighbors, their classroom. And I really think we need to look at it, and I understand it's state mandated, it's federally mandated. But I also understand as a taxpayer, those places can charge what they want, that needs to be paid. There's not, I get it.
I don't disagree with you.
And as a mom, I live this world every day, and you know what? They're in that classroom and they're doing okay, and I know sometimes it absolutely needs to happen, but as a district, I really think we need to focus on doing it better.
So,
That's kind of where I was going with that.
yeah, is it possible and or are there any legal constraints with breaking out these line items that simply say contracted services to distinguish between something like a, intra SAU contracted services and, outside of SAU contracted services so that we can understand the different costs,
Do you mean it like a grand total? Like 40,000 of these are our own employees and 50,000 is an outside agency?
Yeah, or I think what we want to see is like 5,000 of these, or what we don't want to see.
Yeah.
And so if we saw this, we would know like, okay, $5,000 of this is our own SAU employee and 1.255 million of this is, outside of SAU placements. Because when we look at these numbers, we can't tell the distinction between those two types of expenditures.
So I can absolutely do that for you. And just as a quick example, for Hill School, the contracted services line, there's only 21,000 of that contracted services line is outside providers from SAU 53. The rest of that is internal.
And it tends to be physical therapy, right?
Correct. Yep, the majority of that cost, so out of that 21,000, 10 of that is PT, so physical therapy. Yeah.
That you're referencing line 208. Or else,
Yep, yes, that is correct.
Yeah, thank you.
what's this? This is not just stuff, so not easy. Other questions? Carrie, do you have, I thought you were working the mic again.
No, I'm good, no, I'm good.
Anything else?
I'll just make a comment on the last part. I think to basically break it down that way, what's in-house, either in school or SAU versus outside. will be helpful also for the budget committee to understand and also the public, where this money's going, so.
I'll have that for you ASAP.
Great.
All right. All right, let's see, page 19. And lines 269 and 270. So this is going to be, I've been calling it enrichment programs. So these I've added in the teacher salaries, in the adult ed salaries, those were not in there before. On line 274 is the vocational tuition salary, not salary, tuition, I've added that in. That's the only things I've added for the 1,300. And I just made a note that section went up to 80,071.
Quick question. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Did you, I know last year there was a substantial increase in, students going to CRTC. And is this what we're talking about right now?
I am talking about that.
Okay.
Yes. Yep, and their rate also changed as well.
That was my question too, is if it was more kids or if it costs
I
more.
believe it's both, and they also do like a reconciliation as well, where they have, so they receive certain amount of dollars from the state. And so whatever shortfall from whatever the state didn't cover, we end up getting charged for. So it's not just the increase in students, it's also their rate change as well as their reconciliation, just like we do for our tuition, it's the same type of deal.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so now on page 3 of my notes. On pages 20 to 23, I didn't make any changes, so you can go right to page 24. And this is gonna be, let's see here, so there are 2,100 accounts, which is your guidance and nursing. So lines 349, 350, and 351. Those are your guidance salaries, I've added those. There's been a personnel change since the last session and then voting CBA increases. I made no changes to page 25, so we can skip past that. On page 26, right in the middle of the page towards the bottom, that's that diagnostics I was talking about earlier on line 385, 386, and 387. You're going to notice that the column where it says 24-25 proposed budget, you're going to see zeros there, and that's because that's the area where we shifted those costs up to the 1,200. And I put in a note for you as well, and for the budget committee so that they know where those funds went to. On page 27, towards the bottom, are your nurses' salaries. Those have been added. On 401, 402, and 403, those we've added in some extra days for the nurses over the summer, as well as the nursing salary has been added. So the nurses over the summer, they do summer registrations, kindergarten screenings, and things like that. So they need some additional days over their regular contract in order to fulfill those duties. So the 2,100 accounts, we are guidance, assessment, and health services. That's going down 463,000 and change. I made no changes to page 28 to 30, so we can skip to page 31. Do you have any questions on that before I skip ahead if you have? Let's see. So on page 31 is on line 456, 457, and 458. That's your library salaries. I've added those. Those increases are included the CBA increases again. I've made no changes to page 32 or 33. Skip past those. So the 2,200 accounts, which are your curriculum and library services, those are increasing by $8,800 each. So we can go right to page 34. So pages 34 through 37, I'm just going to summarize because that entire section had nothing in it before. This is the school board section. So I've added in all of the school board, which is your treasurer's salary, your school board salary, stipends, those types of things. Really, the only things that have really changed are going to be the audit services, which is on line, on page 38, which is line 559, 560, and 561. We've increased for the multi-year contract we have, as well as the actuary services. I spoke about those at the full SAU board meeting. Pembroke has had actuary services for a number of years, so that is not a new service to you. But we did get a new rate for them. So those have been. The other piece that has been added, in this, it says SAU 53 under the line 565, 566, and 567 on page 37. That's your district assessment. So that's the SAU budget that's distributed out. Now, there's a couple different factors that are in this, and the breakout is in this other packet for you. But I did do a little summary. Your percentage is 40.3. It increased by 0.4% over last year's. Your equalized valuation went up pretty significant. It went up about 168,000, a little bit more than that, actually. And your students went up 85, which we actually, I think Andy or Jean mentioned earlier that we had additional students. So those are some of your drivers other than just the SAU budget. So you have your valuation, your pupils, and then the SAU budget. So those three factors are what is driving that. So in this 2300 section, we are at an increase of 60,000 for you. Any questions on that section? Right. Sure, it's good. So page 4 of my notes. I'm going to talk about pages 37 to 42, which are your 2400 accounts. Those are your administrative services. So right at the very, very bottom is really the only thing on page 37, which is the Hill principal salary. Now, the salary increases that you're going to see in this section are not new increases. These are increases that the school board voted on for this current year, but we pull at the end of the budget. So then once the year actually takes place, they need to go to the line that they belong. So I don't want you to think, oh, we just added in all these extra salaries. They were voted on, they're just down in, I think I might have noted it in your notes. The actual pools occur on line 729, 792, 793, 794 on page 50. I've also added in your at-risk coordinator. That's in there as well. So you have your principals, assistant principals, and your at-risk coordinator. On line 582, 583, and 584, those are your secretary salaries. Again, those are the increases, and they as well are pulled at the end on page 54 and 55. Line 789, 790, and 790. Those will show up under non-certified business. I've added in your tech salaries, which are on line 588, 589, and 590. Again, same situation. Those increases are derived off the prior vote. Again, are found on page 54 and 55, line 789, 790, and 790. On lines 591, 592, and 593, which is on page 39, those are your tech summer support. We've added in some summer days for our tech support so that they can get technology ready before the students come in. Those have been added. On line 606, 608, and 610, which is going to be on page 40. Those are in the middle of the budget, in the middle of that page. These are all of the bulk softwares that the SAU puts together. So IT, Josh goes out, our director of IT for the SAU, goes out and bulk shops software. And then what he does is then each of the school districts that partake in these programs are billed out for the services that pertain to for only their students in their district. So this is their portion for them. There is a decent increase in this line. One is because of increased students usage is one, and two, the increase in the particular just inflation in costs for the software. So that area is going up almost 24,000. On line 614, 615, and 616, I've added in your communication line. That wasn't in there before. So your total increase for the 2,400 administrative services is 84,378. But again, those really, some of those increases are really on the bottom. Any questions on that section? All right, the next section are pages 43 to 45. These are going to be your operations building, so your 2,600 accounts. So on lines 650, 651, and 652, I've added in your custodial salaries. Again, these increases were pulled at the end of the budget on page 54 and 55 in line 789, 790, and 791. At the very bottom of that page is your water and sewer, which goes on to page 44 as well. These are your, I've added in dollars for those for line 663, 664, and 665. I've also added in your telephone funds. That's on line 670, 671, and 672. Your electricity estimates were not in there before, so I've added those in. That's on line 679, 680, and 681. So all those can be found on page 44. On page 5, right in the, not page 5, that is not true. Page 45, right in the middle of the page is the liability insurance. I've added in dollars for those. It is going up. I am finding that all the districts, their rate is just increasing. It's not because you've added any extra property or anything like that. It's just, the rate is just gone. I've made no changes to page 46 through 50. So we can scroll right to, flip right to 51. On page 51, really the only change I added to this was I added in the school resource officer, which is on line 739. So the total increase for the building operations, your 2,600 accounts, is 165,958. Any questions on the 2,600? The next section is going to be pages 51 to 52. This is going to be the transportation section. On line 740, which is in the middle of the page, on page 51, it's 741 and 742. Those are your regular ed transportation, as well as McKinney-Vento. So, which is transportation that is required, that is not special ed. It's what we've also termed as homeless transportation. You may have heard it that way before. I believe, did you pass out a? Yeah, there's some additional documentation that Jessica passed out in regards to that to explain it. But there is a significant increase there as well for that transportation. McKinney-Vento alone went up 130,000. That note where it says 218,000 underneath the elementary school bus, that is, we can cross that, that is not accurate. But the 130 is. On lines 743 through 751, this is going to be your special ed transportation. Those have increased pretty substantially. Transportation as a total is increasing 875,000.
Nice.
This is a nice time for me to give an update that I've had 2 conversations with Highland, that solar, the electric fleet bus company in Riverton, Rhode Island. And I have connected them with Revision Energy, and they are having communications. And I am close to being able to talk to you guys about costing information. So, you know, to the extent that the higher these numbers get, the better and easier it makes to make a pitch to change. That's great, but this just stinks.
It does. And I know we've had this conversation before, you know, when we have some of these private, you know, transportations, we do have a contract that we use with Durham, and we utilize them as much as possible. They have right to first refusal. So we go through them, they give us the best deal. There are certain times where they are unable to provide transportation, so we have to go to more of a smaller transportation company. And some of those transportations run, you know, anywhere from $400 to $600 a day. Yeah, so that's what's really driving up this cost, as well as additional services that aren't necessary at this time.
Can you say anything, and again, without going into specifics, because this is special ed, but I mean, this is like over double. And that's, I mean, we can't have twice as many kids, and I'm sure, like, can you give an idea of like what, of the increase, like what percentage of that is because there's more kids versus the price of the service going up? Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, so if you look back at your placement lines were also increasing, and I think this goes back to what was mentioned before in regards to the more students you have out of district, it directly correlates to your transportation. So every time we send a student to an out-of-district placement, we are required to transport them there. The majority of our kids in Pembroke are using Durham transportation, which is, quite frankly, the cheapest transportation we have. A majority of them are all shared rides. I will say that, so it's not all individual, the majority are shared. And there's very few that use a private company for transportation. So the majority are shared rides for special ed transportation, and it directly correlates with your cost of special ed placements. I don't know if that kind of answers what you were.
It does, it's just, I'm sure you guys can understand the frustration.
Yep.
Looking back to the 22-23, you're talking this will have tripled in 2 years. And that is insane.
I agree. I'm gonna be looking at the costs of what it would truly take to own some of our own vehicles as well. So I'll be looking at that to try and compare. So there'll be more to come with that. Once we get out of this initial phase of budget season, then we'll be able to research that.
Anything else? Lauren? Onward.
I made a bear of good news.
Unlikely.
All right.
Are we still at or below the per pupil average cost of education? I mean, if we bottom line this all, aren't we still in a good place? So come on now.
Item to take that.
You're in the company, all the other districts are also, same percentage increases on their budgets. Mine's too. Are we like 10 to 12% average in the? others are talking about around the state as well.
So the next sections are going to be your fringe benefits, which is page 53 to 55. So on page 53, your health and dental, we do have final rates, as I mentioned. And so the rate increases that we received SAU-wide was between 6.3 and 9.9. Pembroke's is 6.6 for support staff and 8% for professional staff. That's for the health. Dental went up 4.7. So the numbers that you're seeing reflected in the budget aren't just a direct increase of the rate, but also plan changes and personnel changes. When I say plan changes, I don't want to assume you know what I mean by that, but if you have a single plan, that you have an individual that was a single plan and they get married, now there may become a two-person, or maybe now that two-person family now just have a child, now they went to family. It also can go the opposite, where you could have a two-person plan and somebody gets unfortunately divorced, and now they went to a one-person. So it does go back and forth. Lines 765 to 787 and 795 to 797, those are the rest of your fringe benefits. They all attribute back to your budget rosters. The only thing I really wanted to mention was that the retirement rate is, as of I know of today anyway, is remaining the same at 19.64. So there hasn't been any discussion or correspondence that I received that that's going to change. On line 789 to 794, those are the pooled increases. We did add a recommendation for this evening so that there was something in the budget for you to discuss this evening. And so what we put in there is 3% plus some market adjustments, which I didn't go over. But those have been added to your bottom line already. So the total increases for the 2900s is 839,000. Any questions on those fringe benefits? All right, we can move to page, let's see, on page 56, lines 804 and 805, that's your principal and interest for your lease. I put in here bond, but it really is a lease. So I've added in those dollars. On line 808, that's your food service transfer. I'm estimating only utilizing $5,000 for that transfer, and the reason for that being is because the food service program does have a surplus and we do need to utilize it. We are only allowed to carry a certain amount of balance, so we do have to we've had to write a plan and submit it to the state, the DOE, and how we were going to tackle utilizing those funds. And we did state that we would utilize it to offset this year's budget and next year's. So we intend to do that. I still need to put some dollars in there because any accounts receivable cannot be covered by surplus in the food service program. So I want to make sure that the district has some. On lines 812 and 813, these are your proposed grants and the full food service budget because we have to allocate for the total appropriation. So the estimated grants are about $628,000. This is a direct revenue. So if we only get $500,000, we spend $500,000, we receive $500,000. It nets to zero, but we have to appropriate it. So the amount that we see in the budget, there'll be a direct offset in the estimated revenue. For the food service, same thing. The only other difference is the $5,000 transfer. The rest is 100% covered by revenue, either coming in from lunch sales, state revenue, federal revenue, or offset by surplus. That's the full budget, but before I go on, before we get into further conversation, I did put some notes at the end of the budget because I did think it was really important to note because obviously this budget has gone up significantly. So I just wanted to kind of draw attention to the drivers. So Special education is going up $1.5 million. The operational expenses are going up 2.1. Of those 2.1, this is what's driving. 323, I'll say 324,000 is directly related to transportation, not including special education. 445,000 was directly related to the CBA voted increases that I mentioned earlier. 839,000 is directly related to benefits. 71,000 was the English as second language learning services. And then 446,000 is related to the rest of the budget. Other items that are building operations and overhead. So I just wanted to kind of give you a brief summary of what all those increases entail.
So, doing math, okay, I'll do, and keeping a little running total to the left of those operational expenses at the bottom of that note. Adding it up roughly, you've got 300,000, 700,000, 1.6 million, and if you get past that ESOL line, you're at 1.7 million. And if I understand it correctly, going back up to the top, so special ed 1.4 million, 1.5 million, we don't have a say in that. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, the first 4 bullet points outside of deciding to cut staff, we don't have any say in any of that. Is that accurate?
Yes, really, there's only this 446 that's at the bottom.
Right. So of the 2.1 of operational expenses, 81% of that roughly is not under our control, with the exception of the decision to make staff cuts.
Correct.
Just want to make sure that's right.
Now that was a lot to digest.
So not that this is going to amount to a ton, but we haven't had our annual discussion yet about use of trust funds. I think that's it. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, this is steady.
It is, and I apologize for not getting it to you sooner. I literally, this afternoon, I had 4 districts budgets in 2 weeks, so literally right down to the wire. So I apologize, you're just getting it first time. I know it's a lot to digest in a short amount of time.
I mean, I don't know, questions, comments? I'm not shocked. I'm a little shocked by a couple of them. That one, double in transportation is, but stuff at home feels the same way. You know what I mean? We're all, grocery bill for a family of 4 is twice what it was a couple years ago. So I'm not surprised that the school's in the same situation. It's going to be a fun season. So,
Did Amber say that there was a 3% plus market rate for us to discuss tonight and that you were going to present on that? Is that happening?
Discuss compensation.
Okay.
Hasn't even attached to it. So.
Okay.
All right, any questions? Go ahead.
I think I have a question that's not non-public material. Can you explain who is that for? Is that for people who are covered by a CBA?
No, those are anyone who's not covered by a collective bargaining agreement.
Okay.
Any other budget questions or comments? Thank you very much for all the work. Thanks for coming tonight. Appreciate it. We've been talking a lot.
The budget looks great in the new. Yeah.
Yeah, I did have a couple things, and these are just me being stupid, so it's not possible in the new system, but I figured I'd ask. if it's possible to somehow denote, highlight that we used to changes over 10K in either direction, that'd be great.
Unfortunately.
If there's a way to put a line after all those subtotals that you talked about, that would be great. I understand software limitations, so.
Now strict next to,
Like those big changes over, like instead of the color coding and things like.
so there is like a data entry screen where we add in all the numbers. And then there's a totally different section that prints that report. So that report, the only thing you can tell the report is what columns that you want it to report on. One of the things that I don't like, and I cannot figure out how to change, is the fact that even in the description, it cuts off half the descriptions. And I can't move them over. It's, so there are some, not so wonderful things about it, but there are some wonderful things too, because it really does prevent formula issues and things like that, and.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a net positive, I just figured out that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I wish I could. I have found a screen that we can pull into Excel, that is a little bit more friendly than I originally anticipated. It will not have notes in it. This screen, if I were to pull this report into Excel, is messy. But the data entry screen that we have, that can be pulled into Excel, and it has everything other than the notes. So we will be able to do that. It will still need to be, it's not going to have totals and things like that in it, but at least we'll have all the data.
All right, thank you very much. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to D. Your visual. So do you have announcements? Is that why you were?
No, it's in drive.
Okay.
I brought one.
I saw you.
Share.
So at this point, this is a very rough draft, and the only thing that we've done is put in the numbers that Josh uses to populate his plan. But you've also had conversations about making some changes to these. We didn't do anything. You talked about, oh, we want to bring this one up to this amount of money and lower this one down to this amount. We didn't touch anything. All we put in the draft so far is what Josh is requesting to sort of for the CIP. I think anything you do is in the CIP. So again, that technology fund is there, but we didn't, if you want to have that conversation about utilizing that or adding more money to it, those are things that you can talk about. The budget number obviously is still blank. Number 3 is going to be the collective bargaining agreement with the paraprofessionals that those negotiations have not finished yet. So those will also get populated once that's done.
I have 2 of these.
Amber opened it and it just saved it as a different format, but they're the
That's
same.
different.
No
Yeah.
change.
I don't care, I just want to make sure that's the right thing.
Yeah, you can go in and delete the one that you
I'm sorry.
have copied. That's all right.
I guess I have to say I have an emotional reaction to the budget presentation, which is to raid the trust funds.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't, I don't know. I don't know that's gonna get better in subsequent years, so I don't know if that, I don't know. I need time to think.
I can, I'm glad you mentioned that. I can also let you know that Amber and I are starting to review the year-to-date reports. And we've got some work to do I don't want to panic anyone, but we're probably approximately $400,000 over expended right now. If we were to spend every penny, and with the special education numbers changing constantly, that makes me nervous. So I sort of did a soft freeze today on the budget. We can get some reimbursements from trust fund expenditures. So Josh sent all that stuff up, and we'll have a public hearing and recoup some of that. And then we're going to just take a look as a leadership team line by line to see if there are some funds that we can free up and say, you know what, whatever we bought, that's all we're getting. We're not buying anything more in that, you know, X, Y, and Z line. So we have some work to do, but we are watching very closely. And I guess my point, when you mentioned the trust funds was we may be rating them this year. So we just have to keep our eye on that.
Anybody have an initial reactions to the warrant suggestions? I know I need some time to look at this closer.
Gosh, if only we had a strategic plan to guide our decision-making.
CIP guides.
Yeah, I think so. For this particular one, CIP is that.
Your trust fund balances are in your budget.
Yeah, that's super.
Great.
Don't forget that doesn't count the withdrawals that we're making from things that you approved. Yeah.
Correct. I did put in like 110 or whatever that was part of the warrant article that we had approved, the community had approved. So I did put that as a negative in there, knowing, and I put it as pending, knowing there would be some withdrawal.
Anything else on trust funds before we go? Good.
I want to go back to one question on the trust fund. So, under, special education trust fund, they won $358,000. Interest year to date, $15,124.
For your couple of years.
Oh, no. No, last year is 25,000.
Yep.
So I guess I'm,
How can that be?
yeah, I guess,
I took those right off of the statements I received from trustee trust fund.
because school building, the school building capital reserve was 7,000, and this one's got 70,000 more in it, but 25, that's a big discrepancy. Assuming that, I would assume, and this I know isn't a question for you, but
Yeah.
these are invested and, wait, they wouldn't invest them separately,
It's all commingled, it's pooled.
it's pooled, so
They
everything,
should have approximately the same return on across all of them. The only thing that would vary is if you made withdrawals halfway through the period, then you wouldn't get interest on the full beginning balance. It would be on a month-by-month basis on the balance of each account.
right,
Above the year above it, there was like a gain and loss of 25, and then down below there was an interest of 25.
yeah,
That's weird.
Well, I think there was some,
oh, maybe they
there
were.
were some,
Missed application.
Just that, yeah,
Yes.
just say that.
of funds in some, they needed to be reallocated by the trustee.
Yeah, I just noticed that.
Funds, so I don't know if that's the reason. I know they had to make some corrections. I'm not sure if that is,
Probably because there's a negative 25,000 the year before.
yeah. So, but I did pull my numbers right from the statements that they sent.
Okay, thank you.
All right, then we'll move on to E.
Thank you, Greg.
Ivy, thanks again. All right, Mark,
Real quick, question for Josh. You've thought about the priority in which these should be listed?
We haven't been over that yet.
Okay, all right,
We just plugged them in.
okay. Because I'm just wondering if the 155 for the school building capital reserve fund should be first, especially if we're in a situation where we might not have that much. And if we do have a, unassigned fund balance, maybe it might only be like 156, so that would be my only input.
So that order you guys usually talk about at one of your last meetings.
Yeah, before we turn them over, yeah. Once you have all the items in there, then we go around and order them as you wish.
All right, March meeting dates.
All right, so I wanted to put this on the agenda. Last year, we ended our meeting and everyone said, why don't we start at 9 o'clock next year? And we made a big note in our notebook to remember to bring that back up. So I just want to make sure that that's your intention. If everyone wants to start the meeting at 9 a.m., we just need to make sure everybody knows what to set up and when to set it up. And I also have a question about attendance this year and whether we should use the gym and or if you're going to put a school bond that we should even maybe have overflow like we did one year. And if we do that, we have to hire a company to provide that. If you have more than one location, both locations need to be able to see each other and hear each other, which takes specialized equipment. So I know that's a lot, but those are the things we need to make decisions on.
Yeah, I mean, I would lean towards saying we would probably need to do overflow if we have a bond and we have this much of an increase or something near this. You know, if you want to guarantee we're getting our money's worth out of the overflow, we can start talking about cutting the sport just for fun. But I mean, I don't know what you guys think. I feel like.
I took my hand off.
Right there. I mean, I don't see. I'm because of the acoustics, but.
And hate to be negative, but I just can't see this bond coming forward. You know, with all the work that's gotta be done, especially redoing the whole plan. I mean, yes, could it happen? Sure, we could probably put everything in line, but the concerns about the community outreach and not having people informed on this earlier is concerning, so that's where I have a little, and I think you've all known that I've kind of like, been wishy-washy on whether it's gonna happen or not.
How far ahead do you have to book something like that?
Let's call a guy.
Yeah, so for the overflow, we're gonna need at least a couple months,
So January.
I guess.
Right. I mean,
We take it
I guess that's why I was saying, like, I don't want to put you under the gun or compress it, but
We can make some calls.
we'll have more information if we say our first meeting of the year, we make a final decision.
And we can make some calls and get
Certain
more.
things that we gotta wait till we have as much information as we can before we spend money that we may not
I
need.
think the person that we used last time was really booked because it was COVID.
Yeah.
And everybody needed to set things up.
Yeah, and I would say, I'm hoping that this is something that we do now, and I would go out on a limb and say that, Ms. Driscoll would be willing to help, but especially if we're in the gym, we need to make captions happen. It's so hard to hear in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just want to take everyone to, make sure that the people that are there can see and hear as much as possible.
So, and do you want to do 9 o'clock?
So I have a question about that. So, I mean, I'm fine with that. I think it's a good idea, but I would hesitate to start our meeting at a different time when the town's gonna start their meeting the following weekend, just for the pure confusion of it. And so my suggestion would be if this board is okay with 9 o'clock, that we send a note to David and the town and see if they're okay with doing theirs at 9 o'clock. And I personally, and you guys can certainly override me, but I think the consistency between the two is important. It's hard to get people to read closely all the information anyway, and if you have one starts at 9, one starts at 10, people are gonna show up early for one and late for the other, and it's gonna be a mess, so. I would urge coordination on that.
I'm gonna do that.
Is that everybody?
I agree. I can do it. Something else.
All right, anything else on that?
Is this the time, would it be would it be helpful?
Now, if we start, making sure that all 5 of us can be present,
Well, I'm not sure, sorry.
are we all supposed to be present? Wasn't that a talking to that we had last year?
Election, that's the election.
Election, yeah, for the voting, you mean?
I thought we're talking about the.
School district meeting on March 4th?
I don't think that's a requirement. March 9, but.
What is the voting?
Yeah, I think it's a requirement at voting, but either way, it doesn't really matter because we can't adjust those dates anyway. Dates of those meetings are programmatic based on some other thing stipulated by the state. say when they are. I mean, we have to say the start time, we don't have to say the date.
I said March 4th and both of you guys said March 9th. So yeah, I'm looking at the wrong year.
It's March 9th.
Voting March 12th and town meeting March 16th.
School kids are in March. Okay, we have some information about primary.
I'm sure you heard on the news that a primary date was chosen. We do need to have that be a no school day. And luckily, we had a PD day already scheduled. So we're proposing in the school calendar that we just flip-flop, change that PD date. It was gonna be Monday, the 22nd. We'll have a PD day on the 23rd instead, and that means we'll have staff in the building, but no students. And then we won't have to add any, January. And then we don't have to add any days to the end of the year by canceling school.
Can I ask, why do we close all 3 schools when voting is only at 1 school?
We've consistently kept the school calendar. The only deviation we've done recently has been, to Hill School with the parent conferences.
Yeah.
But other than that, just for convenience for families, we've tried to keep the buildings on the same schedule. And it was a consistent PD day that we already had planned.
Yeah, and I noticed that you printed from the school up there.
Any discussion, I think we actually need a motion to amend
Yeah.
this calendar, right? So I guess motion to approve switching those days and then we can do discussion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, discussion, conversation around flip-flopping those 2 days? No, okay. All in favor of amending the school calendar to accommodate voting day and changing the previously scheduled professional development day in accordance, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we have one more proof of public comment. Anybody wants to share it in?
We got a comment on the hill renovation. Looked at the layout of the building and everything. One thing I would recommend that you do is address how the traffic patterns will work. Because right now, at all of the schools, it's terrible. You've got buses and parents and everything else. And if you're going to be putting that, I assume that building would go at the upper end of Belanger Drive. That's not the most ideal roadway, and it just conjures up images of an incredible traffic tie-up unless that's planned in. So it's not so much where you put the building, it's how do people get to it? Where do they park when they get there? If there's something at the hill now, any kind of an event, you've got parents parking all the way up Belanger Drive. That needs to be worked out, because if we build a new school, we're gonna have it for a long time. Let's be sure we do it right. On the one question on the budget, I would assume that these numbers do not include a new CBA for your paras. So presuming that would pass, the expense of the CBA would be in addition to what's in your budget numbers. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Anything else? All right, then the board has the ruling non-public session in accordance with the HRSA 91-8:3, Roman numeral 2, small letter A and C. A is the dismissal, promotion, compensation, discipline, and employee of the investigation may charge against him or her. And C is matters which if discussed in public directly affect personal reputation of any person in this group.
Just want to make sure you have.
On a roll call vote to go to non-public at 8:29, Carrie?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.